Hey everyone, Sean here. Welcome back to another edition of After the Movie. I'm actually at my house and not in my theater parking lot like I normally do when I record these things. As I was recording, a bunch of shady people kind of showed up and it looked like they were doing some sort of drug deal, and they kind of just like stared at me gave me like this dirty look as I was recording. I'm like, you know what? I don't feel very comfortable here recording this video in this spot. So I'm like, I'll just come back home. So it's the first time that's actually happened to me when I was recording one of these things, but hey, it is what it is. So I'm like, you know what? I'll record in a more comfortable environment, which is my own home. So anyways, now that I got that 30-second, 40-second intro out of the way, let's talk about the new horror film Talk to Me. This is like an A24 film, I'm guessing, and I don't know the directors. I'm really not familiar with anybody in this movie, although one of the actors, I was like, as I was watching the film, like, God, you look so familiar. And then I had to look at it, like, oh, it's Eowyn from Lord of the Rings. So she's in this movie. I'm like, oh yeah, that is her. I was kind of confused because she looks so familiar. Then I looked it up, like, okay, it is her. So this is an Australian horror film, and the story this time around is about a bunch of teenagers who can conjure up evil spirits by latching onto some embalmed hand, if you will. So they shake hands with this thing, they say, talk to me, and then some spirit kind of pops up in front of them, and then they basically say something like, all right, you can possess me, but they only have like a 90-second time limit. It's kind of a thrill-seeking thing for these various people, because it's like some out-of-body-esque type experience, if you will. Bunch of crazy stuff kind of happens with it, but as you would expect, playing around with some sort of demonic hand is going to lead to some rather dire consequences, and that's naturally what kind of ensues in this thing. Like, some of the characters, one of the lead characters starts seeing spirits outside of the whole possession cycle. They're all really kind of stupid in this movie, because if I was involved with this thing, I'm like, no. If I saw that thing and the crazy shit that it was doing, you get the hell out of there. And this is kind of one of those movies where you're kind of like, it's one of those frustrating, like, where you're the frustrated audience member, as like I like to call it, where you sit there and you see characters just knowingly make like the dumbest decisions possible, and it kind of like irritates you. You're like, I mean, come on, guys, like, this is just really dumb. How many red flags do you expect? Like, what the hell did you think was going to happen when you dealt with this thing? And it's not necessarily like they get like fun comeuppance. It's kind of just like a slow burn, like this kind of miserable type of situation that happens. Like one character kind of gets, let's just say things don't end so well for them at some point in the film, and you see kind of those repercussions kind of labeled in throughout. But I mean, after like kind of the opening scene, you'd think the people involved with this embalmed hand, if you will, were probably like, you know what, maybe this isn't such a great idea to have this thing. Let's destroy it so that way nobody faces any real consequences of it. But of course, they're teenagers and they're all really dumb. So what did I think overall of this film? I think the concept itself is kind of interesting, where instead of like necessarily like a drug addiction, if you will, it's kind of this hand addiction. These kids are all kind of seeking this high, if you will, of this thing, and then it has to deal with like the lead character, if you will. We come to find out, like, part of her like reason to latch onto it is because her mom passed away and she's trying to communicate with her. And these spirits, if you will, they kind of play tricks on your mind, if you will, and these sort of things. And like the cycle kind of, it's kind of like an endless cycle, if you will, and this sort of thing. So I thought the lead actress herself, I think in terms of like performance-wise, I think she did pretty good for the most part. Like, there's no quote-unquote bad acting within this film. There's a few intense sequences, and there's some very violent moments that were pretty good. Overall consensus, it's not a film I can see myself really going back to revisit. I was kind of looking at some of the responses, and like the reviews are apparently very good for this thing, but after watching it, I just don't really see it. I feel like I've seen much better, more interesting horror films. I mean, the concept itself is unique, and by all accounts, I think it's kind of just an all-right horror film. But like I said, the stupidity of like kind of everyone in this movie just kind of takes me out of it. And it's not like a fun kind of tongue-in-cheek kind of way with character stupidity, like an Evil Dead, for instance. Like, that kind of plays it up more so for laughs at the character's like stupidity, but you still love Ash, despite the fact that he's a moron. Here, it's just like, I can't really get behind anyone in this thing. They don't really have like personalities per se that stand out. Like, they're kind of for the most part forgettable, outside of like the main lead actress, who I think did a pretty good job, but nothing all that quite memorable, except like a rather interesting concept. And the ending too is another one where it kind of left me a little bit unsatisfied. I don't want to get into spoilers with it, but I kind of figured they were going in that direction by the end of it, but like a lot of other things kind of felt like they were a bit unresolved or kind of left really intentionally vague because they didn't really want to answer those questions, or maybe they kind of did. But when you have a movie like this, sometimes, like, if the rules aren't so clearly established, it just kind of feels like anything random can kind of happen. And like, oh, see, that was part of it, like, the whole time. So, I don't know. I always kind of like there to be, in some cases, some sort of, like, guidelines, if you will, for these types of, like, malevolent curses and all that. Because, like, if you set it up where it's just kind of, like, infinite possibilities, it can kind of, like, for me personally, it kind of takes me out of the movie. I like to have some sort of limitations for specific things. Like, I like getting, like, if you can get creative with it, but, like, for, like, demonic entities and stuff like that, if you make things a little too OP, like, kind of no way out, if you will, just like, why am I even watching this thing if I know there's, like, no chance to kind of get out of this situation, like, no way to kind of, like, end things for good, if you will. So, some of that just kind of takes me out of it, but, all things considered, like I said, I think it's an all-right horror film. There's some decent acting bits in it throughout. There's just a lot of really, really stupid people in it that kind of take me out of the film. But I think some people will come away liking it. I don't think it's like this horror masterpiece. I don't think it's like this great, fantastic film. But I don't think it's a bad film by any stretch of the means. I think the concept is interesting enough, and I think the acting is pretty decent. Doesn't really have the scares or necessarily packs the emotional punch I think the film was going for with its ending, or like the big shock and awe moment with it, because I kind of see that coming. I mean, I've sat through a bunch of those like straight to video Hellraiser films, and with the fact that like everything's kind of like not making any sense with it, like it kind of isn't anything all that unique in terms of its concept to me. There is some cool violent moments in the film. Like there's one kind of moment like in the middle where you're just left going, ooh, that's a little bit gruesome, but I thought that was kind of cool. And then there's some kind of weird comedic moments, one involving a dog, which I won't get into spoilers too, but that was kind of one of those ones where I'm like, ooh, boy, what the heck's going on here? But anyways, like I said, Talk to Me, which, by the way, you didn't play Talk Dirty to Me, like the Poison song in the movie. That's a little bit of a disappointment for me. Like, as soon as I heard the title, I just, like, because I think of that song, because I really like that song, I'm like, I just want to just, like, throw that little Talk Dirty to Me title card in there or something like that. But there's nothing like that. And, again, that's on me for, like, the, like, wanting to see that, but I don't know, I just feel like he could have maybe integrated that into the movie, even though it's not necessarily at all. It's just for my own like sake of humor, but I'm not going to deduct points for that. It's just kind of something I was thinking of as soon as I heard the title of this film. But yeah, all things considered, the movie's just all right. So I could see some people liking it, but it's not really one I'm going to want to go back to revisit. I don't see, like, I mean, I get this thing's getting really strong reviews, but I really honestly just don't see it. I legitimately don't think this is an amazing movie by any stretch of the means, but hey, that's kind of par for the course. Like, I go against the grain sometimes, and there's times where things are like kind of like get a lot of flack, and there's times I'll really like it. Then there's times where something gets like really strong response, and I'm just like, this kind of isn't that good. For instance, like a movie that came out like last year, The Northman. Like, I thought that movie was stupid, but apparently it got good reviews, but I just didn't see it. So I don't know. Sometimes I'm with the grain, sometimes I'm not, but I'm just kind of thinking that this film's just all right. So, but anyways, if you've seen Talk to Me, what did you think of it in the comment section down below? Be sure to like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to your channel for more content, all that other fun stuff. And yeah, that's all I gotta say. As always, take care now. Bye-bye then, and I will see you all in the next video, which will be on the Meg 2 probably tomorrow. So, peace out.